What if a desperate law student, drowning in debt, received an offer so shocking, so impossible, it could either be his salvation or his ultimate ruin? How far would you go to save your family, even if it meant sacrificing your own soul? A bleak, gray sky loomed over the small college town in Pennsylvania, its streets slick with a persistent, cold rain. Michael Davis, 23, trudged along the sidewalk, his worn backpack slung heavily over one shoulder, his face etched with a worry far too deep for his young years. He was juggling his final year of law school, a grueling part-time job, and an avalanche of crushing debts left behind by his late father. The world seemed to close in tighter with every passing day, suffocating him. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a stark interruption to his spiraling thoughts. "Michael Davis speaking," he answered, his voice tired. A composed, authoritative female voice responded, "Mr. Davis, this is Eleanor Ainsworth. I'd like to meet with you. It's regarding your financial situation." Michael frowned, confusion clouding his already troubled mind. "I'm sorry, who are you? How do you know about—" "I know enough," she interrupted smoothly, her voice exuding an undeniable confidence. "Let's meet at Ainsworth Bistro, 7 p.m. It's important." The call ended before Michael could protest, leaving him stunned and intrigued. He made his way to the upscale cafe, the rain falling harder now, his threadbare jacket doing little to keep him dry. Stepping inside, he was greeted by warm, ambient lighting and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. At a secluded corner table sat Eleanor Ainsworth, a striking woman with impeccably styled silver hair, dressed in a tailored suit that radiated immense wealth and quiet power. She looked to be in her early 70s, her eyes sharp and intelligent. "Michael," she greeted, her tone calm yet commanding, gesturing for him to sit. He hesitated before taking the seat opposite her. "Mrs. Ainsworth, what's this about?" "Straight to the point." "Good," she said, taking a delicate sip of her tea. "Michael, I know about your debts, the ones your father left behind. I know you're barely scraping by. I'm here to offer a solution." Michael's brows furrowed, a spark of suspicion in his eyes. "And what would that be?" She set down her cup, her piercing blue eyes meeting his. "Marry me." The words hung in the air, heavy and utterly surreal. Michael blinked, certain he'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," she said, her voice steady, unwavering. "This isn't about romance, Michael. It's a business arrangement. I'll pay off all your debts, ensure your financial security, and in return, you'll be my husband." Michael let out a disbelieving laugh. "You're serious? Why me? You don't even know me." Eleanor leaned forward slightly, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. "Exactly. You're young, unattached, and desperate enough to consider this. I don't need love, Michael. I need a companion. Someone to share my name, my estate, and nothing more. Think of it as a contract." Michael shook his head, his mind reeling. "This is insane. What's in it for you?" Her expression softened for the first time, a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "I've spent my life alone, Michael. I have no children, no family left. I want companionship, even if it's just for appearances. And I want control of my legacy. A husband will help solidify that." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I can't. I need time to think." "Of course," she replied coolly. "But don't take too long. The offer doesn't stand forever." Michael walked home in a daze, the cold rain soaking through his clothes. What if the weight of your family's survival rested solely on your shoulders, forcing you to consider an unimaginable sacrifice? Would you trade your freedom for their future? That night, Michael Davis sat at the worn kitchen table with his mother, her pale face etched with worry, lines of exhaustion tracing paths around her kind eyes. The staggering cost of her ongoing medical treatments had drained them both emotionally and financially, and his younger sister's college tuition loomed like a dark, insurmountable cloud. "Michael," his mother said softly, her voice trembling slightly after he explained Eleanor Ainsworth's shocking proposition. "I know it sounds unthinkable truly, but if she's willing to help, maybe it's worth considering. Michael stared at his hands, calloused from his part-time construction job, torn between his fierce pride and his crushing desperation. "You're asking me to marry a woman I don't love, Mom?" he whispered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "A woman old enough to be my grandmother, just to solve our problems? I'm asking you to save yourself, Michael," she said, her voice thick with unshed tears. "To save us." The following morning, Michael returned to the Ainsworth Bistro. Eleanor was already there, her demeanor as calm and composed as before, as if discussing a multi-million-dollar merger rather than a marriage. "You've decided," she stated, not looking up from her tablet, her voice devoid of emotion. Michael took a deep, shaky breath, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. "I'll do it." She smiled faintly, a ghost of triumph flickering in her eyes as she set down her tablet. "Good. The arrangements will be made immediately." A week later, Michael stood in a small, sterile courthouse, dressed in a suit Eleanor had provided, the expensive fabric feeling alien against his skin. The ceremony was quiet, almost chillingly so, witnessed only by Eleanor's stone-faced lawyer and a stoic notary. As they exchanged hollow vows, Michael couldn't shake the profound unease in his chest, a cold dread that settled deep in his bones. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Eleanor turned to him, a strange, almost triumphant smile on her lips, yet it didn't quite reach her piercing blue eyes. "Welcome to your new life, Mr. Davis," she said, her voice a soft, silken whisper. As they left the courthouse, rain drizzling once more, mirroring the bleakness in his heart, Michael caught his reflection in a murky puddle. He wondered, with a sudden, chilling clarity, have I just saved my family, or have I irrevocably sold my soul? What if the life of luxury you've suddenly inherited felt more like a gilded prison, its opulent walls whispering secrets of a past that refuses to stay buried? The gates to Eleanor Ainsworth's sprawling estate creaked open as Michael's cab rolled up the long, winding driveway. The house loomed ahead, a magnificent mansion that could easily pass for a museum, its towering columns and pristine stone facade exuding generations of old money. Yet, its windows seemed dark and lifeless, like vacant eyes staring out at the manicured, yet strangely sterile gardens. Michael stepped out, his single suitcase in hand, feeling like an unwilling visitor in someone else's elaborate dream, or perhaps a waking nightmare. Eleanor greeted him in the grand foyer, her demeanor as polished and impenetrable as ever. "Welcome, Mr. Davis," she said, the formal address sending an involuntary shiver down Michael's spine. "I trust you'll find everything to your satisfaction. Dinner is at 7. He nodded mutely, following a silent housekeeper who led him to his assigned room. It was opulent, with a king-sized bed, antique furnishings, and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the meticulously kept, yet eerily empty gardens. Despite its undeniable luxury, the room felt cold, as if untouched by human warmth, a pristine display case rather than a living space. That evening, Michael sat stiffly at one end of the long, polished dining table. Eleanor was at the other, dressed impeccably in a silk blouse and pearls, a queen presiding over her silent domain. The food was extravagant, prepared by a chef he hadn't yet seen, served by staff who moved like ghosts, their footsteps barely audible on the marble floors. "I trust you're settling in," Eleanor said, cutting into her filet mignon with surgical precision, her voice breaking the heavy silence. "It's different," Michael replied cautiously, the understatement hanging in the air. "This place is huge. Feels like I'll get lost." Eleanor smirked, a faint, almost imperceptible curl of her lips. "You'll get used to it, or you won't. Either way, you're here now." Michael bristled at her bluntness, her casual dismissal of his discomfort. "You didn't mention much about your late husband before," he ventured, trying to steer the conversation. Eleanor's knife paused mid-cut. She dabbed her mouth delicately with a linen napkin before speaking, her eyes suddenly distant. "He was a businessman like your father. Their paths crossed once or twice." Her tone darkened, a subtle shift. "But as you might imagine, not all encounters end well. Michael's pulse quickened. What do you mean? She looked at him, her eyes sharp, assessing. Let's just say, she continued, her voice a low murmur, unfinished business has a way of lingering. She picked up her wine glass, the crystal catching the light. But that's in the past. You'll soon understand why I chose you. Her cryptic words left Michael deeply uneasy, a knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach. After dinner, he wandered the cavernous halls of the estate. The house was eerily quiet, save for the faint creak of floorboards underfoot. He passed several locked doors, their ornate brass handles gleaming faintly in the dim light. Each one seemed to whisper secrets he wasn't meant to know, a silent chorus of unspoken histories. As the days passed, Michael grew more unsettled. The staff avoided eye contact, speaking in hushed tones when they thought he wasn't listening, their whispers like rustling leaves in an empty forest. He overheard snippets of conversations that made his stomach twist. Why him? Does he even know? She never does anything without a reason. He'll figure it out eventually. They always do. One evening, while pacing the vast, silent library, his gaze fell upon Eleanor's antique desk. Papers were strewn across its polished surface, along with a small, ornate key. It gleamed under the soft glow of the desk lamp, its intricate design catching his eye, beckoning him. His gaze darted around the room. No one was there. Heart pounding, a mix of fear and irresistible curiosity churning within him, he reached for it. The key was heavier than he expected, cool to the touch. Michael's mind raced. Could this be for one of the locked doors? He glanced towards the shadowy hallway, where unseen presences seemed to dance. His breath quickened as he slipped the key into his pocket, a tangible piece of the mystery now in his possession. What happens when a single, forgotten key unlocks a room full of secrets, revealing a past so dark and twisted it threatens to consume everyone it touches? Could this marriage of convenience be a meticulously crafted instrument of revenge? The mansion was shrouded in an unnerving stillness when Michael Davis crept down the shadowy hall. The antique key felt like a lead weight in his pocket, its cool surface a stark contrast to his clammy palm. His pulse quickened as he approached the locked door he had noticed earlier, its ornate handle gleaming faintly in the slivers of moonlight streaming through the tall, arched windows. Glancing nervously over his shoulder, his heart hammering against his ribs, Michael slid the key into the lock. The soft click reverberated in the profound silence, sending a fresh chill down his spine. Slowly, cautiously, he pushed the heavy door open. The room was a time capsule, frozen in another era, untouched by the present. Dusty furniture draped in white sheets stood like silent sentinels, and faded wallpaper peeled in forgotten corners. Photographs in tarnished silver frames lined a mahogany side table, their images capturing happier, long-gone times. Eleanor as a vibrant young woman, a distinguished man who must have been her late husband, and another unfamiliar couple, their faces smiling, oblivious to any future sorrow. But it was the stack of papers on the ornate writing desk that immediately caught his attention. Michael flipped through them, his eyes widening with each passing page. Legal documents detailed failed business deals, ruinous investments, a catastrophic financial collapse, all directly linking Eleanor's late husband, Harold Ainsworth, and Michael's own father. A particular letter, written in sharp, slanted, furious handwriting, accused Michael's father of outright fraud. "You ruined everything," the letter raged. "My family was left with nothing because of your lies. Your greed." His breath hitched when he noticed the last page tucked beneath the others, a marriage license. His name and Eleanor's stared back at him, stark and undeniable against the yellowed paper. It was dated weeks before their courthouse wedding, far earlier than he had known. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just a recent arrangement. It had been planned, meticulously, for a long time. On the desk, beside the incriminating papers, lay an old, leather-bound diary. Michael hesitated, a sense of dread washing over him. Then, compelled by an unseen force, he opened it. The entries were Eleanor's, her elegant script revealing a calculated, chilling plan to trap Michael in a marriage that would fulfill her ultimate, consuming goal: to settle old scores, to exact a devastating revenge. "I will take everything from him," one entry read, "just as his father did to me. He will be my pawn, an instrument of my justice." Michael froze, a cold sweat breaking out on his skin, as the door behind him creaked open. "Enjoying yourself?" Eleanor's voice was icy, cutting through the shadows like a honed blade. He spun around, guilt and a sudden, stark fear writ large on his face. "Eleanor, you thought you'd find answers here?" She stepped into the room, her silhouette sharp and imposing against the dim light from the hall. "Curiosity killed the cat, Michael. What do you think you're doing?" His voice was low but firm, a tremor of anger beneath the fear. "Why did you really marry me? Is this about my father? Is this some kind of twisted revenge?" Eleanor's eyes hardened, her usual composed facade finally cracking, revealing the raw, festering wound beneath. "It's not your place to ask questions, Michael. Just do what you're told, and you'll leave this marriage better off than you started. Isn't that enough for you?" Michael's fists clenched, a surge of defiance rising within him. "Enough? You've lied to me, manipulated me. This isn't a marriage. It's a trap." Eleanor's lips curled into a faint, chilling smile, one that didn't reach her cold, calculating eyes. "A trap, is it? Maybe you should have thought twice before signing those papers. Desperate boy." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You may think you're smart, Michael, but you're just like your father, blind to the damage you cause until it's far too late." Michael glared at her, the weight of his father's past, his father's sins, crushing him anew. "If you hated him so much, why take it out on me? I had nothing to do with what he did to your family." Eleanor stared at him for a long, agonizing moment, the silence stretching like a taut, fraying string. Finally, she turned on her heel, her composure returning, a mask of icy indifference settling over her features. "You're in over your head, Michael. Stay out of matters that don't concern you." With that, she left the room, her footsteps fading down the long, silent hall, leaving Michael alone in the dusty, forgotten room, the chilling truth of her vendetta echoing in the oppressive silence. What happens when the walls of a gilded cage begin to close in, and a desperate pawn must find a way to outwit his captor before he's completely consumed by a decades-old vendetta? That night, lying wide awake in his luxurious but suffocating room, Michael Davis turned the ornate key over and over in his hands. Eleanor's chilling words haunted him, but so did the damning documents and the raw emotion in her diary. Why had she gone to such extraordinary lengths to entangle him in her elaborate schemes? Was it truly just about revenge? Or was there something more, something deeper and even more disturbing, lurking beneath the surface? His thoughts were abruptly interrupted by the faint sound of Eleanor's voice, drifting from her study down the hall. He slipped quietly out of bed and crept towards her study, pressing his ear against the heavy oak door, his heart pounding. "Make sure the transfer is complete," Eleanor said, her tone sharp and commanding, devoid of its usual cultured poise. "We can't let him back out now. Time is running out." Michael's blood ran cold. Whatever was happening, he was in far deeper than he had ever imagined. The once imposing Ainsworth estate now felt like a gilded prison, its luxurious trappings concealing dark secrets and a palpable sense of menace. The next evening, Michael approached Mr. Harris, the estate's head butler, a man whose calm, knowing demeanor suggested he'd seen and heard more than he ever let on. "Mr. Harris," Michael began, his voice low, urgent, "I need your help. Something isn't right here." The older man regarded him with a steady, assessing gaze, his hands clasped neatly behind his back. "Mr. Davis," he replied, a hint of weary resignation in his voice, "I was wondering how long it would take before you came to me. You know something, don't you?" Michael pressed. "About Eleanor, about all of this." Mr. Harris hesitated, a flicker of sadness in his eyes. "You're not the first young man to be drawn into Eleanor's world, Michael. She's clever, resourceful, and utterly ruthless when it comes to her goals. He paused, his gaze thoughtful. My advice? Watch your back. Very carefully. Michael's chest tightened. Why are you still here, if you know what she's capable of? Mr. Harris's expression softened, a fleeting look of profound regret passing across his face. Some of us, Mr. Davis, don't have the luxury of simply walking away. Determined to find a way out, Michael began devising a desperate plan. He reached out to a trusted friend from law school, Peter Evans, under the guise of catching up. Peter? Michael began, trying to sound casual. Hypothetically, if someone signed a contract under coercion or false pretenses, is there any way to void it? Hypothetically, yes, Peter responded, his voice tinged with curiosity. But it depends on the evidence. Why? Are you in some kind of trouble, Mike? Michael quickly deflected. No, just a class project I'm working on. Thanks, man. Over the next few days, Michael carefully searched Eleanor's office whenever she was away, desperately hoping to uncover something that could explain her consuming obsession with his father, something he could use to free himself. Late one night, as he rifled through her desk, his fingers brushed against a hidden envelope tucked beneath a stack of financial reports. It was addressed to his father in Eleanor's sharp, distinctive handwriting. The letter was a scathing, venomous condemnation. It accused Michael's father of embezzlement, fraud, and deceit that had led not only to the financial ruin of Eleanor's family, but, ultimately, to the tragic death of her beloved husband. You left us with nothing, the letter seethed. My husband's heart couldn't take the stress, the humiliation, and he's gone because of you. I will see to it that your family pays for what you've done, generation after generation. Michael's stomach churned. Eleanor's actions weren't just about reclaiming her fortune. They were about a deep, consuming revenge, fueled by years of festering pain and unrelenting anger. Returning the letter to its hiding place, Mark resolved to act, and act quickly. He couldn't allow Eleanor to continue using him as a pawn in her twisted vendetta. That night, he began meticulously mapping out possible escape routes from the estate, noting guard patrols and blind spots in the security system. But Eleanor's sharp instincts, honed by years of navigating a treacherous world, caught wind of his unease, his subtle shift in behavior. The next morning, she found him in the breakfast room, her icy presence cutting through the quiet like a sudden, chilling frost. You've been busy, haven't you, Michael? He froze, his spoon halfway to his mouth. I don't know what you're talking about. Eleanor smiled coldly, a predator sensing its cornered prey. Don't play coy with me, Michael. If you think you can outsmart me, you're sorely mistaken. I've dealt with far craftier opponents than you. Michael swallowed hard, trying desperately to keep his voice steady. I don't know what you're accusing me of, but I'm not doing anything wrong. Eleanor leaned closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper, her eyes glittering with a chilling intensity. If you betray me, Michael, you'll wish you hadn't. Remember that. She straightened and left the room, leaving Michael to grapple with the terrifying, growing realization that escape might be far more dangerous than staying. But staying meant surrendering his life entirely to Eleanor's twisted plans, a fate he resolutely refused to accept. What happens when the desperate hunt for freedom uncovers a truth more devastating than imagined, forcing a pawn to confront his queen in a final, high-stakes showdown where everything is on the line? The air in the Ainsworth estate felt charged, heavy with unspoken threats, as Michael Davis paced the grand library, the weight of his discovery pressing heavily on his shoulders. The private investigator he'd quietly hired had just left, confirming the devastating, unvarnished truth. Eleanor's late husband, Harold Ainsworth, had indeed been swindled by Michael's father in a fraudulent real estate deal, a betrayal that stripped the Ainsworth family of their entire fortune. Harold's subsequent death from a heart attack, broken by the stress and humiliation, was the final, tragic blow, leaving Eleanor embittered and fiercely determined to exact a brutal revenge. Eleanor's proposal to marry Michael had been far more than a calculated plan to settle old scores. It was a meticulously crafted, deeply personal way to make his family suffer, even from beyond the grave, ensuring his father's legacy was tainted by her vengeance. Michael clenched his fists, a surge of cold anger coursing through him. How could she blame him for his father's sins? But as much as he resented Eleanor's manipulative actions, he couldn't entirely deny the profound pain that had clearly driven her. A pain that mirrored his own family's struggles in a twisted, ironic way. That evening, Michael met his law school friend, Peter Evans, in secret, their hushed conversation a stark contrast to the usual lively chatter of the campus coffee shop. With Peter's sharp legal mind, he compiled the evidence he had painstakingly collected from Eleanor's office and the investigators' damning findings. Among the meticulously organized documents, they discovered Eleanor's deep involvement in current business dealings that bordered on illegal, shady partnerships, falsified reports, all designed to rapidly rebuild her lost empire at any and all costs. "Michael," Peter said, his voice grave as he reviewed the files. "This is enough to take her down, to expose everything. But you need to be incredibly careful. If she realizes you're onto her, if she even suspects, there's no telling what she might do. This woman is dangerous." Michael nodded grimly, a cold resolve settling in his eyes. "She's already done enough damage. It's time to end this once and for all." The next morning, Michael waited in the grand sitting room, the meticulously compiled evidence tucked securely in his briefcase. When Eleanor finally entered, her icy composure perfectly intact, radiating an aura of unshakable control, he stood to face her, his own fear pushed aside by a newfound determination. "Eleanor, we need to talk." She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, her tone clipped, dismissive. "Is that so? What could possibly be so urgent, Michael?" His voice was firm, unwavering, as he pulled out the documents, laying them one by one on the polished mahogany table between them. "I know everything, Eleanor. About my father, about Harold, about what you've been doing to rebuild your fortune." For the first time since he'd met her, Eleanor's calm, icy exterior faltered. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, flicked to the damning papers in Michael's hand. A flicker of something unreadable, fear, surprise, in their depths. "You've been snooping again, haven't you, Michael?" she hissed, her voice dangerously low. "Do you even understand what your father did to my family? The ruin he brought upon us." Michael stepped closer, his own voice rising, no longer a pawn but a man confronting his captor. "I understand that he wronged you, Eleanor, deeply. But what about the people you've hurt along the way? What about me? I didn't do anything to deserve this." Eleanor's jaw tightened, her eyes blazing with a cold, furious fire. "And my family deserved to lose everything? My husband deserved to die of stress and heartbreak, while your father lived comfortably, untouched by the devastation he caused? Don't talk to me about fairness, Michael." His hands shook as he held up the irrefutable evidence. "Revenge won't bring him back, Eleanor," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. "And it won't undo what happened. You've spent your life consumed by this hatred, hurting innocent people, ruining lives. When does it end?" Eleanor's shoulders sagged slightly, and for a fleeting, almost imperceptible moment, Michael thought he saw something akin to regret, a flicker of profound sorrow in her usually cold eyes. "You remind me of him, you know?" she said softly, her voice suddenly weary. "Harold. That same fire, that same stubbornness. I didn't expect to feel anything for you, Michael, but here we are." Michael hesitated, caught off guard by her unexpected admission, by the sudden vulnerability in her voice. "If you really feel that way," he said, his voice softer now, a plea rather than an accusation, "then stop this. Let it go, Eleanor, before it's too late, before you destroy everything, including yourself." But before Eleanor could respond, the sharp, distinct sound of car tires crunching on gravel echoed through the silent estate. Moments later, uniformed police officers entered the room, their presence imposing, their expressions grim, followed closely by Peter, his face somber. "Eleanor Ainsworth," one of the officers stated, his voice firm, "we have a warrant for your arrest. You're being charged with multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy." Eleanor's face hardened, her eyes darting from the officers to Michael, a look of cold fury replacing the fleeting vulnerability. You called them, she accused, her voice a venomous whisper. Michael met her gaze, his own voice steady, unwavering, though his heart ached with a strange mixture of relief and sadness. You left me no choice, Eleanor. As the officers led Eleanor away, she turned back to Michael one last time, a chilling smile playing on her lips. You may think you've won, Michael, she said, her voice low, menacing. But revenge isn't so easily undone. Be careful it doesn't consume you too. Michael watched her go, a profound mixture of relief and a lingering, unsettling sadness washing over him. He had exposed the truth, protected himself, and perhaps, in some small way, brought a measure of justice for his father's past sins. But the weight of Eleanor's parting words, the chilling echo of her warning, lingered heavily in the air. Was she right? Would the shadow of their shared, poisoned past ever truly fade? What if the end of a bitter vendetta brought not just justice, but an unexpected opportunity for healing, forgiveness, and the chance to build a new legacy from the ashes of a shared, painful past? The sharp bang of the gavel echoed through the hushed courtroom, signaling the definitive end of Eleanor Ainsworth's trial. Michael Davis sat silently in the back row, a solitary observer, watching as the once commanding woman he had married, the woman who had so ruthlessly orchestrated his entrapment, faced the undeniable consequences of her lifelong actions. Despite everything, his meticulously presented testimony, tempered with an unexpected understanding of her profound grief, had helped reduce her sentence. He hadn't done it out of sympathy, not entirely, but out of a deep, unsettling comprehension of the complex, interwoven threads of their shared tragic story. Eleanor turned briefly in her seat, her gaze, for a fleeting moment, meeting Michael's. For the very first time since he'd known her, there was no trace of the cold calculation, the icy disdain, that had previously defined her. Instead, she offered a faint, almost imperceptible, yet undeniably apologetic nod, a silent acknowledgement of a truth too painful for words. Days later, Michael was summoned to the Ainsworth estate one final, poignant time. The grand house, once so intimidating and isolating, now felt strangely empty, hollowed out by the absence of its formidable mistress. Eleanor, through her lawyers, had arranged for him to receive the deed to the property. The estate lawyer handed Michael a letter, penned in Eleanor's elegant, familiar handwriting. It was never truly about the money, Michael, the letter began. It was about closure. Harold deserved justice, but I lost sight of what truly mattered in my pursuit of it. You've shown me something I thought I'd forgotten: the capacity to move forward, to break free from the chains of the past. This estate is no longer a monument to my pain. Can be something more. Use it well. Michael sold the estate, a decision that came surprisingly easily. Its suffocating grandeur had been a gilded cage for both him and Eleanor. The proceeds allowed him to finally, completely pay off his family's crushing debts, freeing his mother, at long last, from the heavy shadow of his father's past mistakes. With the remainder of the funds, Michael established a scholarship fund in Harold Ainsworth's name. It was a quiet, deeply personal way to honor the man who had unknowingly become a casualty in the bitter feud between two families, a man whose life had been tragically cut short. Michael's return to law school felt like a true homecoming. This time, he was more determined than ever to use his hard-won education for good, for justice, for those who had no voice. He interned at a legal aid center, tirelessly helping individuals who, like Eleanor in her darkest moments, had been wronged and left without recourse. One crisp autumn afternoon, a letter arrived for Michael. The handwriting on the envelope was instantly, achingly recognizable. He sat on a quiet park bench near campus, the vibrant fall leaves swirling around him, and unfolded the paper. It was from Eleanor. Michael, her letter began. I've had much time to reflect. For years, I believed that revenge would heal the wounds Harold's death left behind. But I see now that revenge is its own inescapable prison. Your kindness, even in the face of my profound mistakes, taught me something I never expected. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength. Thank you for being better than the world around you. Thank you for showing me that we can break the cycles we inherit. I hope you find the happiness I never could. Eleanor. Michael stared at the letter for a long time, the words, so filled with a quiet, hard-won wisdom, sinking deep into his soul. He folded it carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket, feeling an odd, unexpected sense of peace settle over him. A year after Eleanor's arrest, Michael stood before a group of bright-eyed scholarship recipients at a small, unassuming ceremony. Behind him hung a simple plaque, the Harold Ainsworth Scholarship Fund for Second Chances. Mark spoke with a quiet conviction, his voice resonating with a newfound purpose. This fund isn't just about money, he said, his gaze sweeping over the hopeful young faces. It's about creating opportunities for those who might otherwise be forgotten. It's about turning pain into purpose, darkness into light. After the ceremony, he sat alone for a moment, reflecting on the tumultuous whirlwind of the past year. His path had been irrevocably altered, twisted and reshaped by unexpected events, but for the very first time in his life, he felt with an unshakable certainty that he was walking in the right direction. He glanced up at the clear, boundless sky, feeling the oppressive weight of the past finally, truly, lifting. Eleanor's letter remained in his pocket, a quiet, constant reminder of the profound lessons they had both learned about redemption, justice, and the truly transformative power of forgiveness. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of resilience, redemption, and forgiveness. Michael's story reminds us that even in the face of profound betrayal and overwhelming hardship, the choices we make can lead us to healing, to growth, and to unexpected new beginnings. If this powerful story touched your heart and left you inspired, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and loved ones. Let's spread the important message of hope and second chances far and wide. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more heartfelt tales that move your soul and remind us all of the enduring power of compassion, forgiveness, and love. Where in the world did you experience this story from? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with another soul-stirring story. Until then, take care and remember to cherish the lessons life brings.